My siblings received luxurious gifts, but I received body wash for our birthdays. Now that I'm moving out, everything is coming apart. I am a 25-year-old woman living with my parents. I have 2 siblings, Joseph and Katrina. As the oldest, I was the first to begin employment. For a long period, just my father and I worked to support the family. My mother was either ill or too weary to work. Over the years, I've realized that her condition is self-inflicted. She would rather sit on the couch all day, watching TV and overeating than work. I gave up trying to convince her to start working a long time ago. My brother and sister began working shortly after finishing school. Unfortunately, they were unable to hold their jobs for long. My brother was a robber, and my sister blamed her lack of employment on her mental condition. The temporary financial comfort we felt when they started working did not endure. I eventually had to take on additional shifts at work, knowing I couldn't rely on them. I worked hard to move forward in my company. Now, I make more than most individuals my age. Many people compliment me on my accomplishments, yet I feel like an imposter when I look back. I have not done anything for myself. 70% of my earnings goes toward home expenses, leaving me with only 30%. That quantity barely meets my needs. On top of that, there is always an unforeseen expense at the end of the month that I must cover. I work so much that I rarely come home, and when I do, it's a nightmare. At least I get paid for my job, but no one pays me to clean the house. I need to clean, do laundry, wash dishes, and make sure we have adequate groceries. My mother and sister barely contribute. My mother spends the entire day watching television, whilst my sister locks herself in her room and only comes out to hang out with her friends or get into trouble. I can't ask my father or brother for aid because they adhere to traditional gender norms. This is the type of family I come from. Although I disagreed with those ideals, I felt I had no choice because I was living in their home. Every time I tried to speak up, my mother told me to find my own place. She understands that I cannot afford my own house while also supporting the family. She also considers my heart is too sensitive to leave them to fend for themselves, or so she believes. None of this is the reason I am writing this piece. It isn't even the reason I'm so frustrated. My frustration stems from the fact that my parents have once again demonstrated their preference for my brothers over me. It was my birthday 2 days ago. My gift? Body wash. Yes, body wash. You might think I am ungrateful, but Katrina celebrated her birthday last month. She had a lavish surprise party that we couldn't afford. I had to take on more consulting work to help pay for it. This came after my father said he had enough money to pay for the party after I initially declined. After the party, he approached me with a sob tale about miscalculating expenses. He also told me that he had borrowed from bad people and was frightened they would harm us. To protect my family, I chose to pay for the party. I was very disappointed because they constantly do this. Whether it's a holiday or a birthday, they always prioritize my siblings' gifts before my own. This year, my brother received a new gaming system as a gift, while my sister received a certificate for our city's most costly spa. And me, I received body wash. After everything I've done for this family, is body wash all I deserve? I'm not sure why, but this time I was rather offended. Every time they did this, I found a method to get around it. I persuaded myself they didn't mean it, that they adored and valued me. However, I believe it is time to quit telling myself lies. That body wash was the final straw. I exploded after receiving it. I was unable to restrain myself. I got a tremendous lump in my throat, and my wrath overtook me. I asked them why I couldn't throw a big celebration like Katrina and Joseph. All I got was body shampoo, not even a good cake. My father became enraged and asked why I was being so disrespectful when I understood their financial predicament. At that point, I began laughing and asked him how he could say it with a straight face. He was the one who went into debt to ensure Katrina had a spectacular birthday celebration, but he couldn't afford more than $20 for mine. I was tired of being treated differently. At that point, I had to inquire whether I was adopted. Is that why they treated me like a stranger? I work hard at my job, come home, and take care of everyone, but all I receive is body wash. They must be kidding. My mother started crying at that point, saying she hated it when I had these little outbursts. So it's all right for her to have emotions, but when I display mine, I'm disrespectful to the family? That is exactly what I interpreted from her comment. She has hundreds of various emotions during the day, and we are expected to tolerate them. But if I get outraged over something legitimate, I'm labeled theatrical. Fine. I decided to quit arguing and go to my room. When they tried calling, I pretended to be asleep. I sat there for the entire time, just thinking. I was really unhappy. Even though I keep myself busy all the time, I am unable to fall asleep. My thoughts center on how sad I am. Most people my age are buying their first car, getting married, or purchasing a home. I see some of them at work doing just that. Even though they earn less than me, I am envious. Despite being ahead in my job, I am far behind in life. I have no identity or purpose in this world. My only purpose is to serve these ungrateful people. Now that I think about it, how did I allow them to treat me this way? It had been going on for so long that I had no idea they were taking advantage of me. My thoughts on this have grown extremely apparent as a result of the event with my birthday gift. Now I understand I don't want things to stay this way forever. Something needs to change. I feel like I'm accomplishing nothing with my life, and I'd like to know what I can do to alter that, to have my own purpose. Update 1. I did it. I moved out 2 months after my original post. I can't believe I moved out only 2 months after the birthday incident. My apartment is small and sparsely furnished, but it is mine. Do you want to know the first thing I did after I finished moving? I lay in my bed for hours, with no one phoning me to repair any minor issue. It was an odd sensation. I had no idea that resting in bed could be so cathartic. You're undoubtedly wondering how I moved, especially given my controlling family. It was not easy, but I completed it. First, I took their counsel and began setting boundaries. I merely paid the bare minimum for household bills and saved the remainder. I also took on more shifts at work and saved the money. When my parents inquired about the money, I explained that it would be included in my year-end bonus. It was difficult, but as soon as I gathered enough for the deposit, I told them to go to hell and moved into my new apartment. Once I had picked which apartment to rent, I informed my parents that I was leaving. It wasn't a pleasant conversation. They were enraged and inquired whether living with them was indeed that horrible. I assured them it wasn't about them, but about me. I was getting older and needed to get more independence. I couldn't do it if I kept living with them. Besides, Mom had always said I should get my own apartment. Of course, my mother was offended by my reply and labeled it snarky. She claimed to want only the best for me, but I mocked everything she said. I realized I couldn't win that fight, so I apologized and went on. My family was very resistant to my desire to emigrate, but there was nothing they could do. I'd already signed my lease and was prepared to go. In protest, none of them helped me pack. I had to approach a couple coworkers for assistance. Janet and Lisa, 2 acquaintances from separate divisions at work, were the only ones who were aware of my predicament at home. When I told them I was relocating, they jumped for delight. When I requested for aid with the move, they were more than happy to help. We completed transferring everything a few days ago, and now I am in my practically empty apartment. I don't have much, yet I'm satisfied. I can't wait to start living independently. Update 2. I've been living in my apartment for more than a month. It's been a tough month, but I'm happier than ever, or was until a few hours ago. Let me quickly recap what transpired over the last month. I've been furnishing my flat and even had a housewarming party. Also, now that I have my evenings free, I've begun to get out with friends and even meet new individuals through them. It is wonderful to finally have a social life after so long without one. Honestly, I think I'm finally living for myself. Aside from developing a social life, I've started dating someone Lisa introduced me to. In the past, I never went out with anyone since I didn't have time. My family was continuously disrupting my plans with some sort of emergency. But now that I live farther away, they can't do that. You're probably wondering how my connection with my family has fared over the last month. Actually, none of them had messaged me at all throughout this time. They've been unusually quiet, which has been disconcerting at times. I considered messaging them, but I stopped myself. I feel like I'm usually the one to break the ice and apologize after our disagreements. I do not want to be that way anymore. I want to be treated with the same respect as any other member of the family. So I opted not to reach out. For a while, I felt our relationship had ended. That was until my mother contacted me this afternoon when I was at work. I was astonished to see her name on the screen, but I responded. As soon as I picked up, she asked, "Where's the check?" At first, I was perplexed because I had no idea what check she was referring to. Had she forgotten that I wasn't living with them anymore? What were her thoughts? Anyway, she wondered how I expected them to function without my assistance. I told her that she had 2 healthy, capable children who could help pay the expenses. They've had a month to look for work. What have they been doing during that time? She then questioned how I could be so inconsiderate to my siblings' plight. So I questioned her how I could feel sympathy for a criminal and a lazy girl. They damaged their own job possibilities. Couldn't they learn from me and persevere? I told my mother that I was not going to send anything and that they needed to make their own plans. Then I hung up. She contacted me numerous more times, but I did not respond. Later, my father called and tried to reprimand me, but I hung up. I couldn't believe what I had done. I had never cut someone off while they were speaking before. But, to be honest, the last month has been so tranquil, and reconnecting with them has reminded me of how tumultuous my life once was. I don't think I want to upset my peace by reintroducing them into my life. I wish they had remained silent. They should have cut me off and left me alone because, in reality, I was never actually a part of the family. Now I see that they only wanted me for as long as I could provide for them. I was living an unsustainable lifestyle because I was always there to support others. But now that's over. I have hit my limit. It is time for me to focus on myself. I should have done this long ago. They have attempted to make me feel bad, but it isn't working. I believe it's because I'm now immune to it. Update 3. Honestly, I'm not sure what's wrong with my family. I can't believe I am related to such strange individuals. I knew they were capable of going to extremes to achieve their goals, but this is too much. I'm not going to be patient with them after this. They're about to witness a side of me they didn't realize existed. It had been 2 days since my relatives began pestering me for money. I've repeatedly told them that I'm not giving them anything, they need to devise their own plan. If they can't pay their bills, how can they expect me to support them when I already have my own expenses? It's totally irresponsible and irrational. I've been ignoring them for the past 24 hours, concentrating on purchasing additional furnishings for my flat. It's finally beginning to look like a house, and I'm really pleased with myself. I can't believe I now have items to call my own. Unfortunately, I can't truly appreciate this success because they've been so obnoxious. I've ignored them the entire time, which is presumably why they decided to come to my residence. Yes, they came to my flat last night while I was hosting a little gathering. Here's what happened. Yesterday was a Friday night, and a few of my pals wanted to go out. But I was too exhausted. Lisa and Janet agreed, so we planned a book and wine night at my apartment. 2 more girls joined us, and we were having a terrific time, until there was a disturbance outside the door. I live in a quiet apartment community, so this was concerning. We attempted to ignore it, but it became louder and soon reached my door. When I opened it, my sister, father, and brother were arguing with the building manager. They demanded to be allowed into my apartment since they were family. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I informed the manager that I knew them, but they were not welcome. My father looked hurt and claimed he only wanted to talk. I asked him to look at the time, which was 10 p.m. I informed them that if they wanted to see me, they could have called ahead. Also, how did they know where I lived? That's when my sister stepped in, stating she learned from a friend who had seen me at the complex. Then she looked around and noted that I was living large. She asked why she couldn't live with me. I looked at her like she was insane. Why would I want to live with someone who is so lazy? I would have to feed her and clean up after her. I have not forgotten the dynamics of the previous few years. I told them to go because they were not welcome, particularly at that hour. My father refused, saying they wouldn't go unless I spoke with them. I informed him that I was not interested in talking, especially since I had guests. Then my brother began ranting at the top of his lungs, addressing my friends and calling me a useless sister. He then forced his way into my flat and started verbally assaulting me. Between him, my sister, and my father, I felt completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my friends sat stunned, watching this horrific show. Things only got worse. My father and brother began rifling through my belongings and turning them upside down. I cried because I saw them treat my possessions so disrespectfully. I implored them to stop, but they did not listen. They said I was to blame and demanded a check. That is, until security arrived. It turned out that Janet had gone to contact security as soon as my father and brother began disrupting the calm. When security arrived, my father and brother refused to go and attempted to resist. That was a major mistake since the uproar became so loud that they had to call the cops. My father and brother are currently in jail for trespassing in my flat and disrupting the peace. They will not be released until Monday, and I have already filed charges. I am bringing them to court over this. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. This marks the end. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them drag me farther into their mess. Update 4. I wanted to post an update sooner because it has been 4 months, but I chose to wait until everything was resolved. Now that the trial has ended, I can finally tell you everything. I think many of you will be relieved to know that my family received what they deserved. Starting with my brother, the judge was harsh on him because he had previously shoplifted and is a repeat offender. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Unfortunately, this will remain on his record, making it even more difficult for him to establish a future for himself. But, honestly, given the way he's been spending his life, he had little chance. I'm hoping that his time in jail would straighten him out and help him set priorities. I've seen folks considerably younger than him who have significantly more structured lives. My father had to pay a fee to the court and is currently on probation. If he even receives a traffic ticket, he's done. He needs to be really cautious for a time. Otherwise, he'll wind himself in jail. Both the judge and the city take these transgressions very seriously, which is why they have met with severe punishments. Now, about my mother. Years of gluttony and idleness have now caught up with her. She is at high risk of heart disease due to her poor lifestyle. Because of how quickly her health is deteriorating, doctors estimate she has less than 2 years if she does not make radical adjustments. Knowing her, she probably doesn't care because she believes she will live forever. I tried for years to convince her to eat healthier, but she never listened, so I gave up. If her high cholesterol does not kill her, my sister most likely will. Speaking of my sister, she's been the talk of the town lately, and not for the right reasons. Since money has been tight and no one is funding her lifestyle longer, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She somehow became acquainted with the wrong crowd, girls who were rumored to be selling certain items on the street corner. It is both unlawful and highly harmful. I heard about a week ago that she had been detained for doing something questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends herself in a physically perilous situation as a result of her chosen route. People have asked me to speak with her, but she chose this life. Honestly, She probably thinks I'm stupid for working an honest job. No insult to anyone in that business, but I've witnessed what some of these girls go through. There is no happy ending in sight for her, only substance misuse, additional jail term, and perilous situations. My mother has fallen multiple times as a result of the stress that Katrina has caused. But Katrina still lives with our parents, so they are enabling her conduct by allowing her to be there. Even though she is making money, she is definitely not spending it appropriately or paying her responsibilities. You are undoubtedly wondering how I know all this. I found out from a credible source. My parents are now receiving food stamps, and my father's working hours have been decreased. He spends most of his time at home, with my mother and Katrina. I can only imagine how hungry everyone must be in that house right now. But it isn't all for them. In addition, they must compensate for the damage they caused to my flat. I was able to recover the items they damaged, but they still need to pay the money the judge ordered. I feel sad for them, but not enough to intervene and help. It's what it is. They made their decisions, and now they must live with the consequences. Update 5. I have an update on several recent events, and the truth is that my family is falling deeper into the troubles that, as I frequently repeat, they made for themselves. They are the type of people who try to dig themselves out of a hole. I'm not sure if there is a way back for them, but I do know that it is not my obligation to get them out of the holes they've dug themselves. And they keep getting deeper. To begin with, my father, who was supposed to pay for the damage he and my brother committed in my apartment, just did not do it. Many of the comments I received in my last update predicted this outcome, and they were correct. The worst part is that this time he didn't even try. He made no effort to demonstrate his willingness to comply with the judge's instruction. However, the judge was correct when he cautioned that any failure would result in his return to prison. A sneeze may land him in jail, which is exactly what occurred. It wasn't a real sneeze, but the fact that he didn't pay what was ordered resulted in a trip to jail. I discovered a few days ago that he is currently serving time there. The irony of the situation is that my father was, in theory, the only one working in that house. I'm not sure how my mother will cope without him now that he's in prison. The last time I spoke with someone close to the family, they said there was almost no food in the house. Given my mother's health issues, this is really frightening. But, to be honest, all I feel is a frigid remoteness from the entire thing. For years, I was the one who kept that house afloat, and they emotionally and financially abused me. They are now paying the price for their own recklessness. On top of that, my mother is alone in the house, not only because my father is in jail, but also because my brother and sister are now behind bars. My brother had already been in jail for a while, as you may recall, but now my sister has joined him. Yes, her business venture ended just as expected. She was arrested. Everyone saw it coming, except her. Her condition worsened when she began using in addition to selling, leaving her even more vulnerable and without much judgment. An undercover detective caught her in the act, putting an end to her attempt to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. Now she's awaiting trial, but I don't think she'll come out unscathed. The worst aspect is that she cannot afford professional counsel, therefore she is represented by a public defender. I do not mean to be unkind, but I do not see much hope for her. As for my mother, I honestly don't know what will happen to her life now. She is staying in the house that previously housed 5 people, but it is now completely empty. My father is in prison, my sister is awaiting trial, and my brother has already served time. The house is emptied, and the saddest thing is that she has no one to care for her. For years, she did nothing but rely on others to bring her money and food. She can scarcely leave the house anymore due to her health difficulties. I'm not sure how she'll survive. I know they get food stamps, but that isn't enough to survive on. In short, my family has entirely disintegrated. All I have left is my peace, and while it may sound harsh, I do not regret having removed myself. Update 6. I feel horrible for having to deliver bad news, but it's no longer my bad news, it's my family's. Despite the fact that everything is unfolding in slow motion, I can't help but feel relieved that I am not personally involved in this disaster. To begin, I have finally regained my money. It wasn't an easy process, and as expected, my father didn't have the money to pay me. The only reason Dad ultimately did was because my mother had to take out a loan to bail him out of jail. The fact that my father was in jail for contempt made matters even more problematic, but she eventually received the money after considerable work. Of course, it was not her own idea, but rather my mother's desperate desire to get my father out of jail. My father's release from jail is arguably the only bright aspect of this predicament. During this period, my mother had been living with a relative while attempting to resolve my father's legal issues. She left the house for an extended period of time, and as one might imagine, it was abandoned. Now, the neighborhood we lived in was never ideal, particularly for leaving a house unsecured. Apparently, it has been vandalized and completely looted. The most worrisome aspect is that according to what I've been informed, there are people living there now. People who, from what I understand, may be previous clients of my sister. The fact that people are squatting within the house is only the beginning of the problem. Still, if my parents are able to remove them, which I doubt will be easy, I'm not sure whether what remains is still a house. It bothers me to think about the state of the place I once called home, especially since I put so much time and effort into keeping it up when I was still living there. But at the end of the day, it is no longer my home. It's not in my name, and it's not my responsibility to solve it. My parents will have to face this on their own. My siblings continue to serve their sentences. There have been little updates on that front. What surprises me the most about all of this is how quickly the situation deteriorated after my departure. It's as if my departure was the final nail in the coffin of a scenario that was already decaying from within. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.